We begin this hour in the Middle East, where dozens of Palestinian civilians are dead as the Israeli military continues to launch attacks on Hamas forces in Gaza. At least 42 people were killed in Gaza yesterday. It is the deadliest day since tensions arose in the region last week. Israeli officials claim they needed to target the homes of militant commanders and destroy crucial tunnels used by Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will do, quote, whatever it takes to restore order and quiet. He says bombardments, including those against civilians, will take time. Nearly 200 Palestinians have died in Gaza since the fighting broke out. Dozens of the victims were children. You can see here rescue workers pulling survivors from the rubble in Gaza City after Israeli airstrikes. At least 10 Israelis have been killed by rockets fired from Gaza by suspected Hamas militants. Around the world, people are taking to the streets. Many protesters support the Palestinians and oppose occupation of their land. Some demonstrations back the Israeli government, but almost all are asking for the same thing: peace. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tyab is in East Jerusalem, where this latest round of violence began.
Here in East Jerusalem, Israeli police have set up these huge concrete barriers, which really just serve to sever Palestinian neighborhoods from each other, which of course really just inflames tensions as Israel continues to bomb Gaza.
Overnight, dozens of Israeli airstrikes pounded the Gaza Strip as fighter jets continue to smash neighborhoods, although Israel insists they are surgical strikes on Hamas targets. 6-year-old Susie is pulled from the rubble of what was her home after being trapped for 7 hours. Her mother and 4 siblings were all killed in the Israeli strike. Riyad Ashkuntana is her father. He says, I was filled with all the anger of the universe, but when I heard that one of my daughters was alive, I thank God. The evisceration of some of Gaza's tallest tower blocks by Israeli fighter jets have been caught on live television, like this 12-story building, which housed foreign media, including the Associated Press. Journalists were warned to leave ahead of the strike that's being called an assault on press freedom. Speaking to CBS's Face the Nation, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the attack.
An intelligence office for the Palestinian terrorist organization housed in that building that plots and organizes the terror attacks against Israeli civilians. So it's a perfectly legitimate target.
Despite the enormous devastation across Gaza, Hamas is continuing its rocket campaign against Israel, causing damage like this in the southern Israeli town of Ashkelon. While in East Jerusalem, where this all began, protesters took to the streets this weekend to commemorate Nakba Day, or the catastrophe, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from the Holy City and other areas decades ago. A trauma Jad Hamad says he's reliving. He's one of 6 Palestinian families in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood facing expulsion from their homes by Jewish settlers.
With the Nakba protest, this must feel very, very acute.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very hard because we had the feeling before, and they are just waking it up, you know, to make it very, very hard to us to live in here.
Are you afraid you're going to be evicted?
Of course. I have kids. I don't know where to go with them.
Now, the possible evictions here in East Jerusalem really is one of the main reasons why we've seen this latest round of violence, a round of violence which, after a week, is showing no sign of ending. Tanya.
Imtiaz Tyab in Jerusalem. Thank you. CBS News reporter Haley Ott is in Tel Aviv with more on these attacks. Hi, Haley. So tell us about the scene where you are in Tel Aviv. What's the latest there?
Hi, Tanya. So actually, it's been a relatively quiet day in Tel Aviv. We haven't had any sirens. We haven't had to take cover or shelter ourselves. And there haven't been many people out on the streets. I don't know if you can see behind me, but that does not mean that there haven't been many rocket attacks or rockets launched out of Gaza today. Around 190 have been launched at areas more in the south, closer to the region.
And Haley, what is the human impact of these attacks by these warring factions? How are civilian lives being uprooted?
The most immediate human impact is obviously the loss of life, which has been massive in Gaza thus far, around 200 people killed. But in addition to that, there's also been a big impact on infrastructure. A lot of these missile strikes are taking out really important parts of society there, roads and electricity infrastructure. Sources on the ground were saying that, a lot has been damaged in terms of the electricity, and that actually they might run out of fuel. The UN is warning that they might run out of fuel in order to even provide electricity to Gazans. So these attacks have an immediate human impact in Gaza, but also one on infrastructure that maybe doesn't occur to people initially. And then also the human toll on the Israeli side is significant as well. There have been 10 fatalities, but also people are hearing sirens all the time and having to take shelter repeatedly. And that has a real emotional toll on people. And that's not even touching upon this intra-community violence that has sprung up in response to this conflict. Communities that are diverse, that are made up of Israeli Arabs and Jews that have been living together for a long time, have broken out. People have turned against one another. So it's had a really big impact on the community here.
And Haley, are there any signs that these attacks will let up soon?
Despite what we've heard of diplomatic wranglings behind the scenes, the short answer is no. There's been no indication by the Israeli government that it's thinking about slowing down its attacks, and there hasn't been any indication by Hamas that it's going to stop firing rockets. So for the moment, we're expecting the fighting to continue.
Haley Ott in Tel Aviv, thank you so much.